introduce today's moderator.
Shenggao Wang is a Chinese language and culture instructor here at our Department of Modern Languages and the Asian Studies program. He received his PhD from the University of South Florida in May 2013. He specializes in applied linguistics, second language acquisition, and instructional technology, and teaching Chinese as a foreign language. Before starting doctoral study at the University of South Florida, Professor Wang was an English instructor at a Chinese university in Wuhan, China. So with that, I'll turn it over to today's moderator, Professor Shenggao Wang.
Okay, thank you. Albert, thank you for your introduction, and thank you all students to come to give me support. I know it's the time that the final exams coming, everyone becomes very busy. So I really appreciate your presence. And also, exactly, it's the right time for the final exam. Our topic is also about exam, about test. So it's pretty much very closely related to the current situation. So here, the title of today's roundtable discussion is Shanghai students again top the global test. So what does it tell us? Yeah, I'm glad to be moderator to moderate today's discussion. So first, how many of you have heard about or know about this test, the global test called PISA? Anybody heard about it? 1, 2, 3? Yeah, most of us are pretty new about this test. So let's briefly note the background information about this test. Yeah, this is a test. Yeah, the test is composed of reading, mathematics, and science. It tests how well 15-year-old students can apply the knowledge and also skills they have learned at school to real-life situations or real-life challenges. So why 15-year-old students? Do you have any idea why the participants focused on 15-year-old students? Here I have information here. At this age, normally students in most member countries or most countries are nearing or at the end of the compulsory education. So at that age, it's around finishing the middle school education, right? The format of test is mainly about the mixture of open-ended questions and also multiple choice questions. But all questions are related to real-life situations. None of them are directly linked to a particular school curriculum in any country. So who conduct this test? Yeah, by an organization called the Program for International Student Assessment. It's a Paris-based research group. Yeah, this organization, this division is belonging to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So in 2012, around 510,000 15-year-old students participated in this test. Yeah, the test was started from 2000, also conducted every 3 years. The next one will be in 2015. Sorry. So at that time, more than 70 countries will take part in this test. Then why they conducted this kind of test, global test? Yeah, the purpose is to test how well students have learned their knowledge or skills, whether they can apply those knowledge and skills to real-life situations, and also to evaluate education systems worldwide. Particularly, they wanted to seek possible answers to questions such as: our schools are really adequately enough in preparing our young students, our young people for the challenges of adult life. Yeah, whether some students or some schools or some education systems are more effective than the schools or education system in other countries. Yeah, whether schools provide enough equal opportunities to those immigrant or disadvantaged students. So that was the main purpose why they conducted this test. So here, this was the result in 2009, global test. In 2009, Shanghai students from China they ranked the top in all 3 subjects. Then the US, in terms of reading, ranked 11th, math 26th, science 23rd. Then in 2012, so here Shanghai students from China consistently ranked the top in all 3 subjects. And the US students' performance looks like even worse than the previous time in 2009. Yeah, the math ranked 36th, reading ranked 24th, and also science ranked 27th. So these are the results of the 2 tests conducted in 2009 and 2012. So here comes the question. So what was going on? Yeah. What does this results tell us? Are Chinese students smarter than American counterparts? Is Chinese education system better than American education system? Here are some other questions. Should American educators learn from Shanghai students' academic performance? What do these results tell American parents and the politicians? Now, will these Shanghai students be more successful in the future than the American counterparts? How should we measure a student success? But last but not least, do these results really matter? What is the real meaning of education? So we're going to share your ideas, your opinions among these questions. You can talk about any one of them, your ideas, your thoughts. Yes.
As we know, with the one-child policy, every kid in China is expected not only to sustain himself but also his parents. So I think the fact that every kid is put under pressure so much is that why they study a lot. Maybe they do way better than the kids from the United States that don't have that obligation or that expectations to commit.
So you mean Chinese students care much about?
I don't know if they care more, but they feel obligated. Or not only to succeed, to maintain themselves, but also to maintain their parents, because they're only child in the whole family. So they're expected to commit.
Okay, so
their study.
there are high expectations from the parents, right, to student success. Yes, you have.
This, to me, is a bad argument. I had to look up the population real quick, but you got 14 million people living in Shanghai. You have over 300 million people living in the United States. This is a more compact spot. If you would have put this up against maybe New York, New York City, they have like about 10 million plus. This is condensed versus condensed. But instead, with America, you got people spread out all over. You have so many different ethnicities and everything going on. You're going to have different variables, and this is why the grades are going to be suffering different places. If you look at the brackets for the states and what their grade GPA is, you're going to see different things. Here in Shanghai, there's one spot, just there. You're going to have better expectancies at this one spot than you would if you said China as a whole or something else like that. So I don't feel like this is a really fair argument.
Yes,
to say that they would be smarter because of this. If you have one city, I would believe that they should have a high GPA if they carry it total. This is like if you go to other certain cities in America where they have an A+ average, and you compare that to Shanghai, you could sit here and change this up a bit.
This is a very frequently challenged question about the sampling of students who attend this test. Yes, you have.
Just to his point, and I guess more on yours, and also to what the article says. Shanghai is also compared to areas of the same size, both in population and in geographic size. So they compare to European states with about the same size. And so, you know, if it comes to just how big a sample you're taking and the average of it, I mean, that shouldn't be a question there. And also the study has looked at Massachusetts in particular and also found that it is lower than Shanghai. And this is straight from the article. And so, I mean, that's just more to that point. But I would caution against extending whatever lessons you have from Shanghai to the Chinese education system as a whole. Because as he notes, you know, if you look at just Shanghai, the average is much higher than the nation as a whole. And I'm sure the results can attest to that. And there's much reason to validate the fact that China as a whole is not as capable as Shanghai in particular, right? I mean, this has to do obviously with the poverty there is, any social conditions. It's just obvious coming from a developing country. But I think as to the question of whether the Chinese education system is better, I mean, I wouldn't know the particulars of the education system. I wouldn't know what it brings to bear on society as a whole. But what I would say is that the fact that Shanghai is you know, so disproportionately better than China as a whole could be cause for concern. I mean, yes, you have great students, but how will they be? How will their success materialize? I mean, it could just be that they become wealthy, and you know, having one city be dramatically more wealthy than the rest of the country isn't necessarily a good thing. Or they could translate this into positive change for China. And I guess this is where really the details matter, and these are the details that matter.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. In fact, many scholars already raised this type of issues about the test itself. Yeah, whether the results are reliable, whether those students are really representative of the whole country. Say Shanghai, probably because of the economy, students' economic background are even higher than the average of the whole country. Whether they're really representative. Yes, you have ideas.
I wanted to bring attention back to that same chart you showed us a couple minutes ago, the snapshot of performance in these different things. The top 10, 8 of those countries are Asian countries, and 4 of those are China. That says a little bit more than this article. And in fact, the article also says that it's a very meritocratic system that is significant, and in the United States, it's not the same. Teachers are not treated as highly as they are in Asian countries. So this is why out of 10 first places, 4 of them are in China. So there's something that is being done correctly in the education system.
You mean those top countries are all from Asia, right? Asian countries among the top. So any ideas? Yes, you want to add?
Right. Well, just to be clear on my previous point, the education system should be viewed in the context of the society as a whole, because the education contributes to that society as a whole. It's not just how high are those scores, but those scores reflect people that could potentially contribute to the society they live in. And to the fact that it's a lot of Asian countries, I mean, there's a lot of details there, many I can't speak for. But, I'm sorry, I forgot the point. But just my first point, do view the education system in the context of society as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. We need to take all things into consideration. But it's a good point. Yeah, thank you.
My second
thank
point.
you.
Sorry. So on the point of it being a meritocracy, there's arguments against meritocracies because they do incline people to view themselves as exceptional as a result of their own work, and this might not necessarily be the case. With Shanghai students, you could attribute a lot of it to economics, right? And so you're a better student because you live in better conditions, not necessarily because you have some blood in you or you have some genes that make you just a stellar student. And this sort of self-regarding or this sort of like viewing yourselves as exceptional isn't necessarily a good thing. When these students go out into the real world and start contributing, I mean, they might have more elitist policies later on. And so I think, again, these are the details that have to be viewed, how those students behave once they get out of the education system, because that's really where the fruit of the education system starts to manifest.
I guess somebody, yeah. What's your?
High school level or
Oh, not university, but just finished ending the middle school education. 15-year-old students. 15-year-old.
The American system is different. The government invests a lot of money in universities, but not in high school. The university is very different from high school level. Maybe you have to take it on this.
Yeah, you mean, yeah, of course, this is only represent part of education, not reflect the whole education system, right? But this, yes, thank you for your contribution.
You know, it feels as though it's leading to, he's trying to lead us to assume that the majority of the population in Shanghai, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Taipei, in Macau, in Korea, in Japan, that the majority of the students that were tested are coming from middle class or higher backgrounds. And I really don't see how that is possible.
But in fact, those test designers or conductors, they randomly sampled students from, say, Shanghai, also including many poor or migrant workers' children.
So if we could say, would it be 50% or less of the students that took this test have the background of?
But I don't know. But anyhow, I want to tell you another case in China. In fact, students in Shanghai, in China, when they are enrolled into college, universities, their performance was not as good, not excellent at all. Many students from the countryside, from the poor province, they need to have very higher performance, higher scores in order to be enrolled. However, for those students in Shanghai, their performance is not excellent at all, but they can still be enrolled into those top universities in China. So it does not mean Shanghai students are really excellent than the students in other poor province. This is the case. Yes, you want.
I wanted to revert back to something earlier because I wanted to look up the size and everything. But you said you're from Shanghai, yes?
No, I'm not from Shanghai. I'm from Wuhan.
What is their? And my major is education, so I don't know much about Shanghai. What is their curriculum like? What do they do each year? What's the pace? Is it the same for everyone? Because this is a little bit bigger than the size of New York. So usually, if you go to New York or like Florida, they'll have the same set standards and curriculums that kind of mimic each other. But some private schools may be different. What is their schools like? I don't have this information to really make a concise, argument. Because they all might have a different standard there. They could be learning things more advancedly, more quickly. Their school years could be longer. The curriculums could be more rigorous.
Yeah,
I would need this information.
These are really valid
I'm sure
questions.
It's a very good curriculum, but would it work here? I can't answer that because.
Okay, you want to jump in some questions?
I know that in Asia, and especially Japan and China, they focus, especially at a young age, they focus more on memorizing facts and numbers, which is generally why they would score higher on this test, because if it's a math, reading, and science, it's like the equivalent of, say, the standardized tests that we make students take here. But they're more focused on memorizing the facts and the numbers at a young age, whereas I think the American system focuses a little bit more on freedom of creativity and critical thinking, which is probably why they score higher on these standardized tests if they're just regurgitating facts or something like that.
Yeah, looks like I agree with your point. Yes.
I actually find that kind of a paradox, though, because since this test, and I was thinking of that earlier because that is what I understand of Chinese education versus American. But if this test is measuring the application of knowledge to real life problems, I actually find it surprising that they score better, because I would feel like I would feel, because you said that, that this test is measuring real life, it measures the application of knowledge to real life problems. So I think that's a really interesting point, but I find it paradoxical that a system that is focusing on memorizing the facts is doing better at solving real life problems as opposed to one that's more creative.
Yeah, but it's okay. You can tell your name. I forgot to ask you to tell your name and which department you're from. Would be better for us to know each other. Please.
I'm a business student. My name is Gabriela Rojas. And as I'm reading this activist, I was going back to the PowerPoint trying to understand what exactly we're trying to those who are trying to solve real life situations. We not only have to include the educational system into this, but more the lifestyle they live. We're talking about people probably in more Asian cultures have to do a younger age at work or something like that. Here in the United States, we're more privileged. We get to actually not only expend it in our needs are mostly almost fed to us thanks to our parents, our economy, and so on. In other places, they might be less fortunate, and because of that need to have to know information, have to deal with real life situations, they might be more, able to solve these problems that are faced in real life situations more than it is in academic structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for your contribution. Any other different? Yeah, that you.
Alright, well, I'm
could you tell your name?
major. My name's Sylvia Ruiz. And to the point of creativity, the article, which I'm assuming most of us have in front of us, at some point says that the Shanghai students show a remarkable ability to make creative use of textbook knowledge. So on the point of creativity, I mean, a creative use of textbook knowledge is pretty decent. And as far as creativity goes, I would be satisfied having apt creative use of textbook knowledge. But I think we should also hesitate to sort of make excuses for the U.S. I mean, if the U.S. is worse off as a whole or in certain regions, then that's a matter of fact. And if it isn't the case, well then, in either case, we should make an effort to improve the system. If it's as capable as the Shanghai system, or if it's less. Now, there's no reason to not improve an education system. And there are lessons to be learned from Shanghai, I'm sure there are. If whatever they use is not necessarily compatible with ours, it's still something that we can learn from. And so...
What about the rest of students? Yeah, could you please voice your ideas about any of them, or your own thoughts? Yeah. Okay, let you first. Just 1 second.
I'm Kevin Rupert. I'm a business major, and I feel that regardless of whether China is the top one, and regardless of whether we should incorporate it or not, they're definitely doing something right that as the United States we need to look at and see where they excel and see if we can apply it in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily exactly as China has implemented it, but there's something that they're doing right, and to see if we can somehow incorporate some form of that into our education system, because we rank very low on these scores. We should probably try to get higher as a nation if we want to remain on the top spot in the world.
Thank you for your contribution. You want to add something, right?
Hi everyone, I'm Evelyn. I study political science. I want to try to answer this question number 6. How should we measure a student's success? According to this article, it says that in Shanghai, success in education brings status. Here in the U.S., I feel like it's mostly students of socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds that align those two things, success in education with status. Most other students just figure out ways to, use somebody's name or have a friend in a place where they could just go in there, drop an application, and then look at that. Tomorrow they're going to be like at the top spot of some company. And it also says that in Shanghai they're very successful in attracting talented teachers into disadvantaged schools. So no wonder their lowest income students have so much success in education. They have the people there to teach them what they need to know, and they're willing. So it has nothing to do with is their system better or worse. It's clearly superior. Clearly.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. Now, one at the end, Lu Mei Ting, right? Is you want to say something? You tell your name and the.
My name is Lu Mei Ting. I'm a political science major. I just had an observation / question / inquiry. I wonder how much the culture is the Chinese culture has to do to influence the success of these students, because within the United States, low-income students or students that come from a different country tend to strive more for education because that's their only way out. So they tend to be at the top of their class, or as opposed to students that are like American and have other options, or to them education is not that much of a big deal. That's just my observance. Whereas I'm wondering if in China, the fact that education is a big part of success, if the culture itself, the very driven, very focused culture to excel, doesn't have more to do, I can't discount the system itself, but the Chinese culture when it comes to education, it's a priority. It, like, from what I can observe, Chinese or Asian students tend to really pursue excellence when it comes to studying. So maybe that also has a different, like, maybe that has something else to do with the success of the system. Because a system is only as good as the students that are learning from it.
Okay, thank you for your points. At the end of our discussion, I will introduce you some information related to Chinese culture or education in China. Then hopefully give you some idea or some information. Okay. Then could you first your name, please?
My name is Beverly Roxanne. I'm a biology major. To go off a little bit what Evelyn said, and for number 3, I was recently reading an article about a teacher in the United States who'd been teaching for 20-25 years, who recently quit her job because she felt that the American education system was no longer about nurturing children, and their, like the girl over there said, their creative development, and it became more about the numbers and pumping out facts and standardized testing. So I think it's really interesting that, you know, with question number 3 about American educators, how if all of these Asian countries are doing so much better academically on any kind of test, and they are focusing on facts and numbers, how it's not correlated
Yes,
here.
thank you for your points. And then, yeah, your name is the 2 over there, okay?
A lot of that has to do, like I said, with the culture aspect, if you look at it, because, first of all, my name is Michael, I'm a poli-sci major.
Yes.
If you look at it, a lot of Asian countries, because I spent a year where I lived in Japan and I was in Japanese school, they spend a lot of focus on 3 R's, reading, math, and arithmetic, which is core value in American, wherever you go in the world. Those 3 you have to know. You have reading, math, and science. All those have to be on the core value, and they focus a lot into that. And that's part of the culture where they put says, listen, those 3 come first. Everything else, such as drawing, artistry, creativity, all that comes second. Where here in America, we say, hey, you can become an artist, you can do all this and that. Where your artistic and creative values are put on a pedestal. Where the other nations and the other Asian nations say, hey, that's all good and great, but listen, if you don't have those 3 down pat, you're not gonna really go anywhere or focus on anything unless you have those 3 down.
Thank you. We have 2. Yeah, use. Yeah, your name. Yeah, your name and the use.
My name is Camila Fernandez, and I'm majoring in journalism. And so, I don't have so much of a statement to say, but I'm very curious as to why the European countries also topped off the United States. They must have a very different system from the Chinese as well. So I'm curious as to what their system is and why they've also topped the United States.
Yeah, why European countries also top United States? You want to add?
Yeah, my name is Anthony, and I'm in my major is education. And I'm not gonna lie, their education system is much superior than ours, and the main reason is we don't. What one person said behind me a little earlier, we do not put priority in education anymore. When it comes to budget cuts in America, the first people who get hit, firefighters, policemen, regular jobs like the garbage and stuff, and education. There is no, like, we just don't care. And the thing is, the other problem in our schools is tenure needs to go away. It is stupid, it just needs to go. I'm telling you this why, because you could be the worst teacher in the world, and if you have tenure, they cannot fire you. You have to literally go in there and beat up one of your students or something really crazy to get fired. And these are the educators from the old who are still sticking around and haven't really went back to college, got more access on things, and they just lose care. Because once they're there, and when these budget cuts happen, when new students like in here who are in education, they get into these schools, they're 1 year or 2 years in, problem is they don't have any priority in the system. They're the first to go. People with tenure, they stay.
Okay.
And this is the round and round little game that we
You have
play.
your reflection on the system here. Then heard you tell your name in the department.
My name is James. I'm an international relations major. Another problem that we have with regards to the educational system in the United States is the fact that our education system is not very adaptive with regards to teaching methods, I would say. With regards to what you were saying about tenure and education major. We will fund things such as technology and all of these like new and cool things that make our schools look more interesting, but when you look at the way the classes are taught, when you look at like the methods that are incorporated, I know that in China, teachers are very adaptive. The idea that they're able to recruit talented teachers means that these are teachers who are able to find new teaching methods and more effective teaching methods. But generally, the teachers here are not certified and they work for.
By the way, how much time do I have? 20 minutes. It's okay. I'm going to introduce my interpretation, my understanding of those results. Hopefully then you can jump in any questions. Is it okay? Because many of you still are very curious about what is going on in China, what is the educational system or how students are learning in China. Hopefully I can give you some more intrigue, some more discussions. So first I want to introduce this information, how the learning assessments, the comparison between China and the United States. Normally in China, Chinese education system is more test-oriented, focused on tests. I'm not sure what this is probably a contributing factor for these test results. For example, in China, in the school, normally how students are tested, meaning quizzes, exams. But here there's a lot of variety, right, in the US. Then different perceptions on learning. In China, normally students will learn from the teacher, from the textbook. Yeah, these are the major sources of learning. Then here, based on my observation, after I studied here for many years, I'm working here for 1 year. Here the sources of learning more varied. From teacher, from textbook, and also we emphasize a lot of peer learning, right? To learn from each other, group discussions or some other peer projects. And also learning from the community. A lot of projects need to go outside the campus to work in the field, in the community. Yeah, if you have here, just jump in if you have any thoughts, ideas, okay? Then comparison of school hours in primary and the secondary education, because this is 15 years old, just from secondary, beginning of secondary. So in China, look at school hours divided into three parts. 2 parts for primary school, from 8 to 12, 4 hours. Then this is lunch break. Normally some students will go back home to eat their lunch and then come back to school from 2 to 5. So altogether 7 hours study. Then here normally continuously 6 hours. However, in the middle school, there is evening classes in China. Then of course at high school, even longer hours for evening classes, 2 hours. These are not optional but required. So maybe these hours can tell you something. Then, of course, Chinese students have a lot of homework to do every day, almost every day, even on weekend. So you can hope this graph can tell you something. A lot of homework to do. And then, look. So this is a typical classroom in China. They look on the table. Probably most of them are test papers. Yeah, not many textbooks. Many test papers. Yes.
I got one last question about Shanghai. I'm not trying to take up everyone's time. Do they have anything that's like the No Child Left Behind thing that we have in America, which would be a giant reflection of why we have that score, by the way?
in China, as a normal, as a whole country, we have 9-year compulsory education. So every students, all parents need to send their children to school until they finish the middle school education, like 15 years old. I'm not sure whether it's the same thing to left.
Like, what happens if they fail for a year? They just don't get thrown into the next grade anyways, just for like laughs and giggles. They have to start over again, right? Like, let's say I fail 5th grade over there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna get the No Child Left Behind Act, which like scoops me up and just says, okay, you're going to 6th grade anyways. I'm assuming here also, if they fail in 5th grade, they're gonna go right back into 5th grade the next year also.
In the elementary school, if they failed, say, the 4th grade or the 5th grade, the 4th grade, they could repeat the 4th grade. But after finishing the 5th grade, then there is a higher, they're going to be enrolled into high schools. Then it will depend on the academic performance, whether they will be enrolled into a high school. I don't know what is the percentage, 90% or even higher middle school students will enter high school, but it's very selective for high schools. If I'm not correct, Professor Mani can correct my information. Yes, do I answer a question? I don't know what is comparable to No Child Left Behind.
Well, the No Child Left Behind is, like I said, like, let's say I failed a grade. I can still get passed on to the next grade, and this can happen every single year. It's one of the things that has started since about the 90s, if I remember correctly, which has destroyed the American education system. I can't find any argument where it's good.
Yeah, but students in China in the 4th grade say...
The thing is, though, because of this, it doesn't really enforce to the children they have to learn to succeed to move to the next grade. From Shanghai standards and from these other top ones that I'm looking at on other graphs, they have high expectations. It's not the teacher's fault if they fail, it's the student's fault. Where here in America, a lot of this is the actual reverse.
Okay, you want to jump to, roommate, you.
I guess, like, add on to his comment about No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind is fairly recent, I would say. So I don't think I agree that it doesn't foster the educational system in the United States. However, it's not completely to blame for the state of the education system here in the United States. And also, I just wanted to ask, are Chinese students subjected to standardized tests like the FCAT, the GRE? Like, do they have to take those tests in order to go on to the next level or of school?
There's no standard, but there's a national, for the high school students, when they're enrolled into college, there's a national test.
Okay.
Then for middle school, to be enrolled into high school, there's a provincial level test.
Okay.
So this single test will determine whether students can be enrolled into a good school. The single test. So that's why students and the parents emphasize a lot about the test, because it will determine the future career or future even fate. Some people will stay in the countryside. Some people can live in the urban or in the city. Yes.
There are three things that are out that I sort of take issue with. First is that being poor, the only way to get out of poverty is by putting a lot of emphasis on your education. As far as I recall, the poorest areas in the U.S. aren't really known for having top-notch schools or top-notch students. If there are exceptional cases, then there are exceptional cases. But I think by and large, when you have a poor student, you won't necessarily get out of that. Also, there are migrant sons and daughters of migrant workers studying in Shanghai, as the article notes. But although they're poor, they're still in a pretty decent place. I mean, you can't compare being educated in the countryside to being educated in the city, where you have some form of access to a lot of resources you wouldn't have otherwise. And then on the point of spending in the U.S., I mean, to what Jane said, yeah, there's probably an issue with how we spend, but the fact that there is spending, I don't think that's something too much in question. I mean, spending per capita on education in the U.S. isn't really known to be too low. It's at the very least a bit above average. So I don't think that would be too much of an issue.
Thank you for your contribution. Yeah, what do you want to say? Okay. Yeah.
Political science major. I would say that maybe one of the factors could be that Chinese spend more time studying than American students, and also that Chinese schools don't segregate high-achieving students with other students. Like they have them all together and they don't separate them in classes. So that could be one because they emphasize a lot of like if you try, you will succeed.
Good. Thank you for your point. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to say something?
So I found the very first comment about the one-child policy interesting. So I wanted to get back to that before I was time because it's been interesting to me. Before I make my questions as comment, I wanted to ask you or anyone who's familiar, how does it actually play out in Shanghai? Do most people really have one child? So you can like pay fines and get out of it, I think. So do you know if most people in Shanghai really do have mostly one child?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Because the one-child policy in China is still going on. Still, many couples still can only have one child. Then parents give a lot of attention or focus on the education of a child, make their children to be really successful in the future. There are very few exceptions. Young couples can have 2 children. Very few exceptions.
Going back to Anthony's original comment about the no child left behind. My understanding of it is that it was to transport children of a lower socioeconomic status into better neighborhoods with better schools and better educators. And it's been commonly misinterpreted to that no child fix.
Thank you for your point. Then you want to say something, right?
Yeah, I want to argue against budget cuts. I don't think budget cuts exist. They just reallocate money to detention centers where I guess they're going to be more useful than they are in the school system. But a country like China where the government is like heavily controlling where the spending goes, of course they see the investment in spending in the education system. Just like 30, 40 years ago, Mao said that they can't have any more than one child, and they're still a country with the largest population in the world. 30 or 40 years ago is when this one-child policy was pitched, and it stuck, and still they have the largest population. So they know that education is where they should put money because they're going to be the global competitors in a blink of an eye if you don't watch.
Okay, this is about the budget issues. Yeah, you want to
I want to go back to the budget cuts because if you go to different schools around Miami, you're not going to see the same input, the same layout. Like you can go to Forest Mon, and this goes to the other thing about the No Child Left Behind. This is where I've done a lot of my hours there because it's one of the worst schools in Miami. I want to see the worst before I see the best. Because when you go there, you see what happens there. Okay, this school literally looks terrible. Their fields and everything, it looks damp. It just looks like a giant clusterfuck. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what it looks like. The students there, because of these new rules, and if you see them and see the way they are, there's students who are in 8th grade who don't know where Florida is on the map. They can't even write a basic sentence. You can write, I don't know, have a nice day. You'll write it usually in a nice grammatical way. These students will get to these grades. They have no idea how to write. They have no idea how to read. They just keep getting passed through the system on. And it just doesn't make any sense why they're allowing this.
Okay, thank you for your... You want to say something, right? I forgot your name.
I just want to implement the huge fact about here culture. Culturally wise, here in the United States, we are a very privileged country. And I think that before it was, it's a huge thing, the innovation of, going to space and this promoted an initiative for higher studies. Now I find it that, this is based only on observation, I find it that now we really see studying and getting a college degree in education as a privilege, not much of a necessity. Now especially like we more focus, as I think one of the students there said, we're focusing about getting connections in one point here or another, not our education, which will lead us to success. My guess is that, I guess in Asia and any parts around there, they're focusing more, okay, I have one child, and this one child, like any like only child people would know, only children, the family would know that their parents are like on top of that child saying, hey, you need to be a better person, a better student, you need to go somewhere in life. So in this implementation of one only child in Asia, I'd say, well, your parents are influenced by their culture saying, hey, you have to be a better student. You're going to be carrying the name of the family over their honor, and family-wise, it's a high thing based on their culture.
Okay, we have only 5 minutes left. I know many of you still would like to voice ideas. I just have some more, briefly introduce more information. Maybe you are interested in this kind of information here. Can you guess what these students are doing from this? Are they protesting or?
Like a school chant.
These students were shouting a slogan before an exam. There will be to determine whether they're going to be enrolled into good high school. So they are shouting, "I must go to college. I must go to college." Yeah, to show the determination. Then this one is, I'm going to show you here the parent involvement, heavily involved in children's education in China. So this graphic shows that parents always hope the child to be educated to, for example, to send to different kinds of after-school programs. One example. So here I'm going to show you, this is all the parents here on both sides. So in the bus, all students were going to attend a very high-stake exams. So look very. So all these parents also are outside of the building. The students were taking tests inside the building. They were angry or anxious to know their children's performance in that particular test because it will determine their future fate. Yes, here the same scene. Yeah, look, parents. So why I show this kind of pictures? Because Chinese parents really get a lot of involvement in their children's education. Another one, in the whole society, and also give higher prize to those top students. This shows these 3 students, they got very, very excellent performance in the national matriculation examination. Here, they received high honor. So this one is more like a celebration of they got the first one, or number 1, number 2 in that province or in that city. This one is the same thing. It's a parade to show or to praise the students here who got the top score, 668. Yes, you want to jump something, right?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to build up on her last comment, which is about culture, and then ask a question. With regards to the culture, Chinese culture, just based on what you're showing here, it seems to be very competitive. Competitive to succeed. So maybe that also has to do with about here, we tend to want to be successful, but not necessarily compete with each other, compete to be the best. We just want to make a way for ourselves. Versus in China, it seems as if the culture drives them to really compete with each other and see who's coming out on top. And I wonder, with the focus of so much focus on books, how much focus is placed on practical knowledge? Because you mentioned that here in the United States we go to field trips and our studies are more interactive versus in China where it's textbooks driven. But you can be textbook smart, but how good are you at applying that knowledge to be innovative?
Okay, thank you for your great question. Right now we have very limited time, only 2 minutes left. So here I want to show you, in fact, both countries are conducting education reforms. Here, China also know the great limits of Chinese education system. So people were advocating reforms in China. China hopes to produce this type of talents in China. In China is lacking of like this top talents. Then here in the United States also taking measures to focus on STEM subjects, right? To focus on science, technology, engineering and the mathematics. So yeah, both countries can learn from each other. In fact, yeah. So this is what we're going to discuss. You have something to say? No?
I wouldn't call Mark Zuckerberg real talent. I mean, yes, he did
you
go
don't
to
agree,
Harvard,
okay.
yes, he did drop out.
But it's kind of an exception, right? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, we have no time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang, for coming today. And,